Hello, this is the Bible History School. This is the 18th session of Revelation and World History. At our Bible History School, we are serializing Revelation and World History in 12 chapters. We have completed the entire lecture on Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 so far. In addition, the Bible History School is currently serializing Bible a Day to Great Acclaim. We are uploading a short video summarizing the 66 books of the Old and New Testaments one chapter a day. We would appreciate it if you could subscribe together. If you just read the Bible, there are many parts that are difficult to read and understand. It is much easier to understand the content if you watch a video that fits the situation rather than just reading the sentences. We made it into sentences that even middle and high school students can easily understand. Even for ordinary people who have difficulty reading the Bible due to their busy daily lives, it is good to meditate on one chapter of the Bible every day. We hope that you will encourage your children, parents, friends, and neighbors to read the Bible. Your support and encouragement has given us a lot of strength in producing Revelation and World History. This video is a collection of the entire video, from Chapter 2, Sections 1 to 8, of Revelation and World History. Thank you for subscribing. Hello, this is the Bible History School. This time, it is the 12th time of Revelation and World History. In Chapter 1 of Revelation and World History, it mainly explained the creation of the Red Empire, Babylon, and the shape of the country. In Chapter 2, we will discuss what kind of country the Red Empire is. That is, we will compare the text of the Bible that describes the nature of the Red Empire with actual history. That Red Empire was none other than the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was first formed by Stalin in 1922. And then, in December 1991, it disappeared into history. Due to the declaration of the dissolution of the Soviet Union by Gorbachev, the president of the Soviet Union. During the existence of the Soviet Union, there were 7 supreme powers: Lenin, Stalin, Khrushchev, Brezhnev, Andropov, Chernenko, and Gorbachev. The Soviet Union lasted for 70 years, ruled by 7 supreme rulers. The world was terrified of communization by the Red Empire, and the Red Empire was destroyed. After the destruction of this Red Empire, there were 10 newly independent countries that were newly established. This was the Commonwealth of Independent States. This empire was called the Seven-Headed, Ten-Horned Beast. This was the conclusion of Chapter 1 of Revelation and World History. In Chapter 2, we will verify the description of the prophecy regarding this empire. We will compare the text of the Bible that describes the nature of this Red Empire. We are trying to find out whether the Soviet Union is indeed the Red Empire described in the prophecy. Let's first look at the text of the Babylonian Empire that appears in the book of Jeremiah of the Old Testament. Chapter 2, The Destruction of the Great City of Babylon. Section 1, 2 days. There are 2 destructions described in the prophecies regarding Babylon. One is the destruction of Israel and the surrounding nations by Babylon. The other is the destruction of Babylon after a set period of time. The period of Babylon's domination over these nations. Let's look at Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 9 to 13. This is the word of the Lord. And now I will let you be attacked by nations from the north, and especially by my servant, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylonia. You and other nearby nations will be destroyed and left in ruins forever. Everyone who sees what has happened will be shocked, but they will still make fun of you. I will put an end to your parties and wedding celebrations. No one will grind grain or be here to light the lamps at night. This country will be as empty as a desert. Because I will make all of you the slaves of the king of Babylonia for 70 years. When that time is up, I will punish the king of Babylonia and his people for everything they have done wrong, and I will turn that country into a wasteland forever. My servant Jeremiah has told you what I said I will do to Babylonia and to the other nations, and he wrote it all down in this book. Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 9 to 13. When interpreting the Old Testament prophecies and the book of Revelation together, the most difficult thing is this. That is, it is difficult to know whether the prophecies of the Old Testament prophecies and the book of Revelation are the same prophecies. The book of Revelation does not specify the years of Babylon's rule. The only basis for linking the 70 years of Babylon's existence, recorded in the book of Jeremiah to the book of Revelation, is the fact that the name of the country recorded in both documents is Babylon. Although we believe that the Old and New Testaments are the same words of God, it is difficult to see that they are prophesying about the same history, because the times they were recorded are very different. There is a condition for the Babylon that appears in the Old Testament prophecies and the book of Revelation to be the same country. The only way to do this is to check whether the content described in the text and the actual history exactly match. The beast in the book of Revelation has 7 heads. The 7 are the number of people who reigned as the highest powers in this country, the Soviet Union. The book of Jeremiah foretold that Babylon would last for 70 years. In fact, the Soviet Union lasted exactly 70 years from 1922 to 1991. This is the link that allows us to see the prophecies of the 2 documents as one prophecy. In order to match them more accurately, we must carefully verify whether the description of Babylon matches the actual historical Soviet Union. Let us read from Jeremiah chapter 50. The Lord told me to say, announce what will happen and don't leave anything out. Raise the signal flags, shout so all nations can hear, Babylon will be captured. Marduk, Babylon's god, will be ashamed and terrified, and his idols broken. The attack on the Babylonians will come from the north. They and their animals will run, leaving the land empty. Israel and Judah will return to their land. Attack Babylon, enemy archers, set up camp around the city, and don't let anyone escape. Proud Babylon will fall. People of Babylon, I, the Lord, promise that even your best soldiers will lie dead in the streets. Thus says the Lord God of hosts, behold, I am against you, O proud one, for your day has come, the time when I will punish you. 2 days appear in the text, and both are expressed as that day. One is the day when many countries are invaded by Babylon, and the other is the day when Babylon is destroyed. Jeremiah chapters 50 and 51 contain a scenario for the day when Babylon is destroyed. This text also contains a secret about Babylon. In Jeremiah chapter 25, verse 11, it is said that the Babylonian Empire will rule over Israel and the surrounding countries for 70 years. In Daniel chapter 9, verse 2, it is said that the fact that Jerusalem will be desolated after 70 years was known through the book of Jeremiah. And in Matthew chapter 24, Jesus mentioned the name of the prophet Daniel, and said that the prophecy Daniel spoke of was a future event that had not yet been fulfilled at that time. In Revelation chapter 1, verses 1 to 3, it is stated that this revelation is a prophecy proclaimed in the name of Jesus Christ. In this way, the Old Testament and the New Testament are closely connected. And we believe and interpret the fact that they are the same word from God. And we are discovering that the facts are definitely consistent. Next time, in the 13th hour of Revelation in world history, we will learn how the one who holds the sickle in the harvest, in Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 16, is connected to the seven-headed beast in Revelation. Thank you for your interest and subscription. This was the Bible History School. Thank you very much. Hello, this is the 13th lecture of Revelation and World History. In Chapter 1 of Revelation and World History, it mainly explained the creation of the Red Empire Babylon and the shape of the country. In Chapter 2, we will learn about the rise and fall of this Red Empire. That is, we will compare the text of the Bible that describes the nature of the Red Empire with actual history. Let's first look at the text to see if Babylon in the book of Jeremiah of the Old Testament and Babylon in the book of Revelation refer to the same object. Revelation and World History, Chapter 2, Section 2. Those who hold the sickle in the harvest. Cut off from Babylon the sower, and the one who holds the sickle in the harvest, Jeremiah chapter 50 verse 16. How the hammer of the whole earth is broken and shattered, Jeremiah chapter 50 verse 23. The Soviet Union's national flag depicts a hammer and a sickle. The hammer symbolizes workers, and the sickle symbolizes farmers. Babylon was called the hammer that strikes the world. The Soviet Union's flag features a hammer, which symbolizes the worker, and a sickle, which is used for harvesting. This text, which sings of the destruction of Babylon, mentions the sickle and hammer. And coincidentally, these two images are depicted on the Soviet Union's national flag. He who holds the sickle in the harvest refers to the Soviet Union, which has a sickle and hammer on its flag. The saying, "the hammer that strikes the whole world is broken," means, Babylon the conqueror has fallen. In other words, it is an expression referring to the fall of the Soviet Union. This symbolism is by no means a coincidence. God planned it, and He carried it out thoroughly and accurately. Revelation and World History, Chapter 2, Section 3. The Great Coalition that destroys Babylon. In the north, I am bringing great nations together, they will attack Babylon and capture it. Babylonia will be conquered, and its enemies will carry off everything they want. This is the word of the Lord, Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 9 to 10. The Great Coalition refers to the coalition of the 10 horns in the book of Revelation. The meaning of the words in Revelation chapter 17 verse 16, "The 10 horns hated the prostitute and destroyed her," is as follows. That is, the Commonwealth of Independent States, a union of Russia and 10 newly independent republics, declared independence from the Soviet Union. As a result, the Soviet Union was dismantled and destroyed. It means the same thing as saying, the Great Coalition destroyed Babylon. The North is consistent with the fact that the Commonwealth of Independent States, which together with Russia led to the dissolution of the Soviet Union, are all located in the North. In Jeremiah chapter 25 verse 11, it is said that, "The Babylonian Empire will rule over Israel and the surrounding countries for 70 years. In Daniel chapter 9 verse 2, it is said that, the fact that Jerusalem will be desolated after 70 years, was known through the book of Jeremiah. And in Matthew chapter 24, Jesus mentioned the name of the prophet Daniel, and said that, the prophecy Daniel spoke of was a future event that had not yet been fulfilled at that time. In Revelation chapter 1 verses 1 to 3, It is stated that this revelation is a prophecy proclaimed in the name of Jesus Christ. In this way, the Old Testament and the New Testament are closely connected. And we believe and interpret the fact that they are the same word from God. And we are discovering that the facts are definitely consistent. This time, it was the 13th lecture of Revelation and World History. We looked at how the one who holds the sickle in the harvest in Jeremiah chapter 50 verse 16 is connected to the seven-headed beast in the book of Revelation. It is amazing how the text of the Bible's prophecy and actual history are so accurately aligned. Next time, we will learn about the topic of chapter 2, section 4. Each will return to his own people and his homeland. Thank you for your interest and subscription. This was the Bible History School. Thank you very much. Hello, this is the 14th lecture of Revelation and World History. In Chapter 1 of Revelation and World History, it mainly explained the creation of the Red Empire Babylon and the shape of the country. In Chapter 2, we will learn about the rise and fall of this Red Empire. That is, we are verifying by comparing the text of the Bible that describes the nature of the Red Empire with actual history. Last time, we learned that the Babylon in the book of Jeremiah of the Old Testament and Babylon in the book of Revelation refer to the same object. The modifiers for Babylon were the one with the sickle at the time of harvest and the hammer that strikes the world. However, the Soviet Union's flag has a sickle and hammer drawn on it. This is historical proof that Babylon refers to the Soviet Union. In this session, we will learn about another nickname for Babylon, Shishak. Revelation and World History, Chapter 2, Section 4. Each will return to his own people and to his own country. People will return to their own people and flee to their own country. For fear of the sword that oppresses them, Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 16. We have tried to heal Babylon, but she has not been healed. Let us abandon her and return to our own country, Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 9. The Commonwealth of Independent States, a big coalition, declared independence, ultimately leading to the dissolution of the Soviet Union. People who fled the destruction of Babylon said, "We will return to our own people and to our own country." If you look at the appearance of the countries included in the CIS, you can understand what this means. One of the most obvious characteristics of independent states is that they are ethnically centered. Each republic that made up the Soviet Union was a mixture of various ethnic groups. However, the standard for independence was that the largest ethnic unit became a single state. This is the same as how each republic was already formed by ethnic units during the Soviet Union. The largest ethnic groups that make up the Soviet Union are Slavic Russians and Ukrainians. The Soviet Union was also a multi-ethnic state with over 100 nationalities, including Tatars and Jews. Among them, each republic was named after the ethnic group that made up the majority in the republic, such as Kazakhs, Tajiks, Uzbeks, and Turkmens. Many ethnic minorities also lived together within each republic. However, the independent republics adopted the language of the ethnic group that became the name of each country as the official language. When these republics declared independence, the Soviet Union was dissolved. They no longer belonged to Babylon and returned to their own people. It was not a great migration of peoples from one region to another like the Great Migration of the Germanic peoples in the past. They returned to their own people, to their homeland, right where they were standing. Each republic gained independence while under the rule of the Soviet Union. They did not try to heal Babylon, that had lost its power. Jeremiah chapter 51 verse 9. Declaring independence, while abandoning the empire is the same as returning home. Revelation and World History, Chapter 2, Section 5. The Fall of Shishak. Alas! Shishak has fallen, the praise of the whole earth has been taken. Alas! Babylon has become a desolation among the nations. Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 41. Another nickname for Babylon is Shishak. The Korean Bible reads Shishak as Shishak, which is the Hebrew Bible's spelling, SSK, with vowels added. The original Hebrew Bible has no vowels, only consonants, and it is read from right to left. The original Hebrew writing does not have vowels. The Hebrew Bible began to have vowels added around the 7th century AD, when Jewish Masoretic scholars created vowel symbols to write it. In the Old Testament, when writing Babylon, it was written as BBL, using only consonants in Hebrew. Later generations read it as Babylon by adding vowels. Shishak is the letter of Atbash, which means Babylon. Atbash script is a style of writing the alphabet in reverse order. For example, in English, the letter corresponding to A is written as the last letter, Z. ABC is written as ZYX, in reverse alphabet order, so that only those who know this secret can read it, and it is used as a kind of code. In Hebrew, when the letters corresponding to Babylon, BBL, are written in reverse, it becomes Shishak, SSK. However, this letter is not a secret letter, written in reverse in the book of Revelation, but is actually pronounced as it is. This is an abbreviation for the Soviet Union. Soviet, Socialism, in other words. SS is an abbreviation for Soviet Socialism. K is the first letter of communism, and it is also the first letter of the Kremlin, the seat of power of the Soviet Union. Shishak, SSK, is not Babylon written backwards, but is actually the national name of Babylon, that appears in the book of Revelation. This is truly an amazing secret. This is the fulfillment of God's prophecy, meaning that God had already aligned the name and pronunciation of the Soviet Union with Babylon and Shishak. The sickle and hammer on the Soviet flag is also consistent with the biblical text. Also, the abbreviation for the national name is Shishak, which is not the alphabet written backwards in the Atbash script. On the contrary, Babylon BBL is the name of the Soviet Union, written backwards in alphabetical order. In Jeremiah chapter 25 verse 11, it is said that the Babylonian Empire will rule over Israel and the surrounding countries for 70 years. In Daniel chapter 9 verse 2, it is said that the fact that Jerusalem will be desolated after 70 years was known through the book of Jeremiah. And in Matthew chapter 24, Jesus mentioned the name of the prophet Daniel, and said that the prophecy Daniel spoke of was a future event that had not yet been fulfilled at that time. In Revelation chapter 1 verses 1 to 3, it is stated that this revelation is a prophecy proclaimed in the name of Jesus Christ. In this way, the Old Testament and the New Testament are closely connected, and we believe and interpret the fact that they are the same word from God. And we are discovering that the facts are definitely consistent. In this session, we learned about Jeremiah chapter 50, verse 16, everyone will return to his own people, to his own country. And Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 41, another nickname for Babylon, Sheshach. The text of the Bible's prophecies and the actual history are in perfect agreement. The fact that the Old Testament's prophecies and the New Testament's revelation both prophesy about the same history. Next time, we will learn about Chapter 2, Section 6, the one who sits as queen, and Chapter 2, Section 7, the merchants and craftsmen of Babylon. Thank you for your interest and subscription. This was the Bible History School. Thank you very much. Hello, this is the 15th hour of Revelation and World History. In Chapter 1 of Revelation and World History, we mainly explained the creation of the Red Empire, Babylon, and the shape of its country. In Chapter 2, we are learning about the rise and fall of this Red Empire. In other words, we will compare and verify the text of the Bible that describes the nature of the Red Empire with actual history. Last time, we learned that Babylon, in the book of Jeremiah, of the Old Testament, and Babylon, in the book of Revelation, refer to the same object. The modifiers for Babylon were the one with the sickle in the harvest, and the hammer that strikes the world. However, the Soviet Union's flag has a sickle and hammer drawn on it. This is historical proof that Babylon refers to the Soviet Union. In this session, we will learn about another nickname for Babylon: the one who sits as queen. Revelation and World History, Chapter 2, Section 6. The one who sits as a queen. Revelation chapter 18, verse 1. After this, I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was illuminated with his glory. Verse 2, he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, is fallen. She has become a dwelling place for demons, and a prison for every foul spirit, and a cage for every unclean and hateful bird. Verse 3, for all nations have fallen, because of the wine of the wrath of that fornication. And the merchants of the earth have grown rich through the power of her luxury. Verse 4, then I heard another voice from heaven, saying, Come out of her, my people, so that you will not share in her sins, so that you will not receive of her plagues. Verse 5, for her sins have reached up to heaven, and God has given her remembering her injustice. Verse 7, I sit as queen, I am no widow, and I will never see sorrow. Verse 8, therefore her plagues will come in one day, death, mourning, and famine. Verse 10, standing afar off in fear of her torment, they will say, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, the strong city. For in 1 hour your judgment has come. Revelation chapter 18, verses 1 to 10. I am the one, sitting as queen. Revelation chapter 18, verse 7. History proves that the Soviet Union was the leading country of all communist countries, and that the power holders of the Eastern European countries, which were satellite countries of the Soviet Union, were actually following the orders of the Kremlin. The expression queen is used because the prophetic book uses a feminine noun for Babylon. It is the same as the power holder of the Kremlin, declaring himself, I am the king of all communist countries. I am not a widow, and I will never mourn. Revelation chapter 18, verse 7. After the communist revolution succeeded in Russia, which was a Christian country. After the formation of the Soviet Union, even Eastern European countries became communist after World War II. Communist theorists in these countries said that a communist revolution would occur in every country. And ultimately, he boasted that all of human society would become communist. However, in the end, that prophecy did not succeed. The communist regimes of Eastern European countries also collapsed. The people of that country no longer followed the Soviet Union and became independent. I am the queen, everyone admires and follows me. I will never become a widow. She shouted loudly, but in the end, everyone left, and the Soviet Union eventually collapsed. In Jeremiah chapter 25 verse 11, it is said that the Babylonian Empire will rule over Israel and the surrounding countries for 70 years. In Daniel chapter 9 verse 2, it is said that the fact that Jerusalem will be desolated after 70 years was known through the book of Jeremiah. And in Matthew chapter 24, Jesus mentioned the name of the prophet Daniel, and said that the prophecy Daniel spoke of was a future event that had not yet been fulfilled at that time. In Revelation chapter 1 verses 1 to 3, it is stated that this revelation is a prophecy proclaimed in the name of Jesus Christ. In this way, the Old Testament and the New Testament are closely connected. And we believe and interpret the fact that they are the same word from God. And we are discovering that the facts are definitely consistent. We are amazed by the fact that the text of the Bible's prophecies and the actual history are exactly the same. The fact that the Old Testament's prophecies and the New Testament's revelation both prophesy about the same history. Next time, we will learn about Chapter 2, Section 7, The Merchants and Craftsmen of Babylon. Thank you for your interest and subscription. This was the Bible History School. Thank you very much. Hello, this is the 16th hour of Revelation and World History. In Chapter 1 of Revelation and World History, we mainly explained the creation of the Red Empire, Babylon, and the shape of its country. In Chapter 2, we are learning about the rise and fall of this Red Empire. In other words, we will compare and verify the text of the Bible that describes the nature of the Red Empire with actual history. Last time, we learned that Babylon, in the book of Jeremiah, of the Old Testament, and Babylon, in the book of Revelation, refer to the same object. The modifiers for Babylon were the one with the sickle in the harvest, and the hammer that strikes the world. However, the Soviet Union's flag has a sickle and hammer drawn on it. This is historical proof that Babylon refers to the Soviet Union. In this session, we will learn about Babylonian merchants and craftsmen. Revelation and World History, Chapter 2, Section 7. The Merchants and Craftsmen of Babylon. Moscow's growth process. In the 13th century, Moscow was a small principality in the northeast, under the rule of the Mongol Empire. Moscow began to develop in earnest when Danil Alexandrovich, the son of Prince Alexander Nevsky, designated it as the capital of the Grand Duchy of Moscow around 1276. The reason Moscow grew so much was because it was a strategic location for trade with excellent geographical conditions. In order to sell goods to the east, or to go north and south, one had to pass through the Moskva River and the Volga River. And Moscow, which was located between these two rivers, served as a transportation route. As a result, the number of merchants coming and going increased. The population grew, and it was inevitable that it would become a center of commerce. Referred to Kim Kyung-muk's Story of Russian History. Since Russia gained independence from the Kipchak Khanate during the reign of Ivan III. In the late 15th century, poetry began to develop rapidly. It was around this time that the Kremlin took on its present-day appearance. In the 16th century, Moscow built a strong defensive wall to prepare for invasions by foreign enemies, especially the Crimean Tatars. In 1712, during the reign of Peter the Great, the capital was moved to the newly built St. Petersburg. However, Moscow continued to serve as the center of economy and culture, as the second largest city. Refer to the Moscow entry in Pascal's World Encyclopedia. St. Petersburg became the capital of Imperial Russia under Peter the Great. But Moscow became the capital of the empire again under the revolutionary government led by Lenin. Moscow is a city that became wealthy because of its merchants as a hub of trade and transportation. However, the goods in the text of the Book of Revelation are not simply manufactured goods. It refers to none other than the communist theory. One of the theories that is the basis of the communist revolution is Karl Marx's capital. This is also a theory related to the economy, regarding how to produce and distribute in human society. The starting point of the communist revolution is whether the country's economic system will be capitalism based on a market economy or communism based on a state-planned economy. The goods that these countries purchased from Babylon are none other than the communist theory itself. The merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her, because no one will buy their goods anymore. Revelation chapter 18, verse 11. Your merchants are the princes of the earth, and by your sorcery all the nations were deceived. Revelation chapter 18, verse 23. The merchants refer to the leaders of the communist countries of Eastern Europe, who established communist governments based on Marxism-Leninism. Sorcery refers to the Marxists' extensive propaganda that, if the revolution succeeds, and a communist government is established on this land, a heaven on earth for workers and farmers will come. When the Russian Revolution succeeded, many people believed this and followed it. As a result, many countries in Eastern Europe also established communist systems after the end of World War II. However, because the people of that country no longer believed in communism, the leaders of the communist regime, who were acting as the henchmen of the Soviet Union, were pulled down from power, and the communist era came to an end. No craftsman will be found in you anymore, and the sound of the grindstone will be heard in you no more. Revelation chapter 18, verse 22. Craftsman refers to people who study and develop communist theory. It basically refers to communist theorists, such as Marx and Engels. And it refers to people who study Marxism and Leninism, and spread the superiority of communist theory and system to the people. In North Korea, for example, there is Hwang Jang-yopi, who established the foundation of Kim Il-sung's Juche ideology. When he was in North Korea, he played a key role in establishing the theory of Juche ideology, for the idolization of Kim Il-sung. However, after Kim Il-sung died and defected to South Korea in 1997, he also wrote articles criticizing the dictatorship of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il. I referred to Hwang Jang-yeop's article, "The sun on the side of darkness cannot illuminate the darkness." Although several countries, including North Korea, still maintain communist regimes. The slogan, "Let's start a communist revolution," is no longer heard in other countries. On the streets of Babylon is found the blood of God's people and of his prophets, and everyone else. Revelation chapter 18, verse 24. In order to make the revolution successful, and solidify the foundation of power, countless people were purged. In addition, all types of killing that can occur in human society, such as war, starvation, massacre. And especially the purges and religious persecution by Stalin were seen in this country. This is a fact that we know vividly through the history of the Soviet Union. All of these things have happened in North Korea, which is half of the Korean Peninsula, and the North Korean Church, which was called the Jerusalem of the East, has been completely destroyed. In Jeremiah chapter 25 verse 11, it is said that the Babylonian Empire will rule over Israel and the surrounding countries for 70 years. In Daniel chapter 9 verse 2, it is said that the fact that Jerusalem will be desolated after 70 years was known through the book of Jeremiah. And in Matthew chapter 24, Jesus mentioned the name of the prophet Daniel, and said that the prophecy Daniel spoke of was a future event that had not yet been fulfilled at that time. In Revelation chapter 1 verses 1 to 3, it is stated that this revelation is a prophecy proclaimed in the name of Jesus Christ. In this way, the Old Testament and the New Testament are closely connected. And we believe and interpret the fact that they are the same word from God. And we are discovering that the facts are definitely consistent. We are amazed by the fact that the text of the Bible's prophecies and the actual history are exactly the same. The fact that the Old Testament's prophecies and the New Testament's revelation both prophesy about the same history. Next time, it will be the last time for chapter 2 of Revelation and world history. We will learn about chapter 2, section 8, Babylon divided into 3 parts. Thank you for your interest and subscription. This was the Bible History School. Thank you very much. Hello, this is the 17th hour of Revelation and world history. We have now reached the last hour of chapter 2, following chapter 1 of Revelation and world history. Chapter 1 mainly explained the creation of the Red Empire, Babylon and its shape. Chapter 2 examines the rise and fall of this Red Empire. In other words, we are verifying the rise and fall of this Red Empire by comparing the text of the Bible that describes the nature of the Red Empire with actual history. We have learned that the Babylon in the Old Testament's Jeremiah and Daniel, and the Babylon in the Revelation, refer to the same object. In addition, it is historically proven that Babylon in the prophetic books refers to the Soviet Union. In this session, we will learn about Babylon divided into 3 parts, the last session of chapter 2. Revelation and World History, Chapter 2, Section 8. Babylon divided into 3 parts. The great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell. The great city Babylon was remembered before God to receive the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. Every island fled away, and the mountains were no more. Revelation chapter 16, verses 19 to 20. The great city was divided into 3 parts. Refers to the question of how the Soviet Union collapsed. There may be many reasons for the collapse of the Soviet Union, but it points out 3 fundamental problems that prevented the empire from continuing to exist. The 3 are ethnicity, language, and religion. The Soviet Union consisted of over 100 ethnic groups, and the languages spoken by these ethnic groups are all different. Throughout the Federation, the official language is Russian, and there are ethnic languages, Ukrainian, Uzbek, Kazakh, etc., used in each republic that makes up the Federation. In addition, there were various languages used in the autonomous republics and autonomous regions, such as Tatar, Chechen, and Kurdish. In this way, ethnic groups with different histories, bloodlines, cultures, and religions were mixed together to form the federation called the Soviet Union. Under this structure, it is fundamentally difficult to become a single Soviet nation. Also, the republics on the European side, such as Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, the three Baltic countries, had many Christians, such as Catholics and Lutherans. And the republics in Central Asia had many Muslims. Despite the Soviet authorities' powerful, religious extermination campaign, the number of religious people was not completely wiped out. On the contrary, the more severe the Soviet Union's religious oppression policy became. Fundamentally, the result was that distrust of the Soviet regime grew even more. In the end, these factors piled up as discontents, making it extremely difficult to maintain the Soviet Union as a single system. Rather, it only strengthened the will to be independent from the Soviet Union, which eventually led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. Eline Carrère-Doncasse, who was studying Central Asia as a member of the Soviet Ethnic Studies Group at the University of Chicago, predicted in her article, The Collapse of the Soviet Empire, The Revolt of the Peoples of the Soviet Union, published in the mid-1980s, that the Soviet Union would eventually collapse in the face of the revolt of these peoples. In an interview with the author by Georges Spiel, Helen Carrère said, "Muhammad, Islam will threaten Marx." Reference is made to Eline Carrère-Doncasse, The Collapse of the Soviet Empire, The Revolt of the Peoples of the Soviet Union. Translated by Shin Sung Kwan, Seoul, 1985. The great city of Babylon will be divided into three parts. It means that the empire will eventually collapse due to the problems of nation, language, and religion. The meaning of the great earthquake in Revelation chapter 16, verse 18 is as follows. It refers to the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the division of political lands, the creation of borders, and the creation of many new countries. Every island was gone, and the mountains were no more. Revelation chapter 16, verse 20. Every island refers to the Eastern European countries that were satellite states of the Soviet Union. And all of these countries have also abandoned the communist system. Mountains is a metaphor for the union of the republics that formed the Soviet Union. Seeing the dissolution of the Soviet Union, he said, even the mountains disappeared. If we summarize the lectures we have given so far in chapters 1 and 2, we can see the surprising fact that the description of the Babylonian Empire, recorded in the text of the prophecy, and the actual appearance of the Soviet Empire are exactly the same. Through this, it becomes clear that the prophecies about Babylon in the book of Revelation, Jeremiah, and Daniel are prophesying about the same history. We have confirmed the identity of the beast, with 7 heads and 10 horns, that rises from the sea. Among the 2 beasts that appear in chapter 13 of Revelation, it was the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union lasted for 70 years, and then disappeared. The 7 heads were the 7 supreme leaders of the Soviet Union. And the 10 horns are the Commonwealth of Independent States, which was newly established after the dissolution of the Soviet Union. In Revelation chapter 13, another beast appears. It is a beast, with 2 horns like a lamb, that comes up from the earth. The number of the name of that beast is the famous 666. In chapter 3 of Revelation and World History, we will reveal the identity of this 666. We ask for your interest and subscription. This was the Bible History School. Thank you very much.